Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall.
And I am just flexing right now.
True.
I turned my little notepad around just to prove to myself, really to myself, it wasn't anything to you, but I wanted to prove to myself that I can, after however many years it has been since we adopted that little opening slogan, I finally have it memorized.
This has been a like recurring thing in our opening segments lately, that either one of us trying to do it without notes or fucking it up or commenting on the fact that we were able to do it without notes. It's I'm sure that for you It Gets Weird fans out there, this is your favorite like recurring joke. It's your favorite thing of us just being able to remember two sentences.
Yeah. Well, it's not so much the bit of us being able to remember. The bit is that we have memory problems. That is the actual bit.
Oh man.
I'm gonna kick this one off, Niall, with an email that we got.
Some food.
We got some tasty morsels in our inbox, and I'm going to read what they have to say. So this came from Caitlin, and it says, "Hello, Niall and Kyle. This may be a few weeks late from the time of release of this episode, but I was so happy to see you guys did a FYD on this movie," which this is referring to A Glitch in the Matrix.
Not Devil's Pass.
No. Yeah.
What was the Russian Yeti?
Russian
the fucking
Yeti.
Last FYD?
No, not that one. This and they go on to say, "I watched it recently and sure had some thoughts. I adore your FYD series. It helps me redigest some of these wacky documentaries that are fun to watch, but maybe hard to come away with anything but confusion. Thank you for saying so, first of all. I'm super interested in the simulation theory in general, so I was left pretty disappointed already having a pretty good grasp on the theory. Josh Clark of the Stuff You Should Know podcast has an episode." Ooh, that's free advertising for Josh.
We'll send him a bill.
Yeah. Has an episode on his solo podcast, The End of the World with Josh Clark, specifically specifically about the simulation theory that is really informative, and we're pricey. We're very expensive.
If you come to us and get our okay up front, we're cheap. But if after the fact,
Josh, or Joshy as I like to call him, you didn't. So that's going to be a fat check. Thank you very much. My favorite takeaway from that podcast episode, made by Josh Clark and reiterated by Nick Bostrom, who was in the documentary, was that there is a good chance we are living in a simulation, but it doesn't actually change anything. I remember this being briefly mentioned.
Yeah.
A glitch in the Matrix just barely grazed that concept, and I think that's true. You're right. I think the concern for maybe swaying viewers one way or another, if this was explored a little more, may have provided the responsibility you were asking for. Okay. If we do live in a simulation, everyone else is simulated too. Your simulated body still needs to eat simulated food. If you commit a simulated crime, you still go to simulated jail, and your simulated mother will still be simulated disappointed. I added an extra simulated in there. Consequences still exist in a simulation. Other people still exist the exact same way you do. I think they were almost there, but needed to hammer that point home a little more. It's okay to believe we are in a simulation, but everyone else is in there with you, so you still have to consider them as an equal part of this simulated universe, and everybody will be significantly better off. Love the podcast. Thanks for doing it. Glad you guys talked about the documentary. Thank you, Caitlin, for that email. And you make a really good point, because they do very, very briefly graze on this. And it does, like, and the thing is, if you lay out the simulation theory like that, where it's like, yes, it's all simulated, but also everybody's equally experiencing simulation, then it's like, well, then That's just real life.
Yeah,
Kind of.
it's thus practically in all practical purposes
Hmm.
indistinguishable from just us not being in a
Right.
simulation. And so like I think that one of the things that we could have hammered home, like just in terms of how we think about this stuff, is the problem with a lot of the arguments of the Matrix kind of thing is the lack of like empathy and the way that
Right.
people tend to
Right.
think they're the only the solipsism.
Yeah.
And that leads to a lot of lack of empathy and a lot of things that are leads to people getting maybe even violent in some situations. But like I think that this is a good point and a thing that honestly like I think is a solid philosophy to like base kind of your shit around. I don't know. It
Yeah. I
works.
mean, well, it's kind of like adding an extra layer of just like
It just
we have to treat each other as humans, but also we're all humans experiencing a virtual reality. I mean, that's fine, really. It is because you're still arriving at the same point. Um, I do think that that's probably you make a good point. That maybe would have been a good thing to focus on, just to offer a side of simulation theory that doesn't sound like solipsism.
yeah. It's that version feels like reality with more steps.
Yeah, yeah, pretty
So
much.
it's which nothing wrong with that. All right.
Yeah,
I thanks for the email.
thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words and the interesting thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep them coming.
I'm well fed.
I
Now that
yeah,
I'm fed and now that my
I'm full.
tummy's not rumbling anymore, Kyle, feed me with knowledge.
I'm gonna
What are we
feed you
talking
some
about this
knowledge.
episode?
I'm gonna feed you. I'm gonna take a big tube and I'm gonna put it in your mouth, and I'm gonna fill you right up.
I didn't say force feed, but
Well,
okay.
we're gonna get halfway through this and you're gonna be stop, no more, please. And I'm gonna be like I'm gonna bust the tube out.
I don't know why, because like whenever okay, so this is such a weird
This is the podcast
thing
for
that
it.
I didn't. God damn it! This is such a thing that like makes no goddamn sense. But anytime someone talks about like feeding you through a tube, my mind, instead of going to like, oh, they're gonna use like a smoothie or like a paste of some kind, I just imagine someone shoving like a hoagie down
Like
a tube
cartoon, yeah,
and just like
like a
just
fucking cartoon.
yeah, they just like they put like a ham and like a fucking hoagie through the tube down your throat, and it just I don't know why, but
Yeah.
that's the image that goes into my brain.
I have wished for my entire life that, like a cartoon, human beings could just like swallow a food whole and then you see its shape outline as it goes through your throat and then it makes a loud kerplunk as it hits your stomach. That would, how much more cool would life be?
This reminds me of a thing I saw going around on Twitter earlier today that was people talking about how like cartoons feel lame now, and they're posting a fight sequence from Popeye, and it's like
Oh,
he like all the arms are like ballooning and
yeah.
contracting, and like someone like gets knocked over and like turned into a chair or some shit. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's the most ridiculous thing, and not that cartoons are actually lame now, but just like they were so weird and imaginative back then.
Yeah.
And like I don't know why, but my brain went to that with the like
I mean, you're
swallowing
right.
a ham.
You're absolutely right. It's like him eating spinach and it travels through his neck and into his arms and stuff. Like absolutely. I guess that's really just to say, check out Popeye.
Yeah,
If you've never heard of Popeye,
Popeye
he's
is
a fun
a
sailor.
non-binary hero.
That yeah, check it out. My God, this week, Niall, I was going through my big list of topics, and I kind of got into a topic a while back that I'd forgotten about. I kind of put it on the shelf, and I decided instead of letting it continue to collect dust in my Firefox bookmarks, I'm gonna pull this one out of the archives. So this week, I want to talk to you about an alternate theory of UFOs and aliens, which is pretty encompassing,
Okay.
all encompassing, but I want to talk about a specific aspect of it because this is a topic where I've wanted to talk about it for a while, but was having trouble making a full episode out of it. But talking about it as an alternate theory for UFOs worked for me.
Okay.
This
You
is
finally cracked it.
Yeah. This is, are UFOs fairies? And vice versa?
Okay. I'm not sure this is one I've actually like. I think I've vaguely seen this listed as a
Mhm.
theory, but I know absolutely nothing about this.
It is interesting. So really I wanted to talk about the history of where the legends of fairies come from because there is I mean, okay, there's a lot of weird subtopics within the realm of cryptids and the paranormal and UFOs and stuff that you can get like really devoted into. Like they're kind of more niche. And fairies is
Hmm.
sort of like being into fairies is kind of like being the horse girl of the paranormal world.
Okay.
Like, it's a very specific thing, and I think a very specific type of person gets like really into it. Um, like to
Is
just to
is would that mean like getting into like military false flags would be like getting really into knives
yeah, yes,
and swords and
exactly.
stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like really into collecting like butterfly knives from like
Yeah.
different centuries. Yeah, exactly. Um
Yeah, all the
or
centuries of the butterfly
decades. I
knife.
meant I meant decades. My
I've
God.
got this sweet
I
butterfly
got
knife from the 1400s.
I got this crazy ass. Yo, this butterfly knife, this is a 200s
Oh
butterfly
my god,
knife.
it's made out of stone and the
It,
first
it
piece of bronze ever
yes,
cast.
it's amazing. Um yeah, yeah, I wanted to talk about fairies for a long time. I was just struggling to get what felt like a full episode because like when you talk about the history of where the idea of fairies comes from, it's not too in depth. But what I stumbled into is that there is a theory that
Some folklorist is going to be angrily tweeting us about that last statement.
yes.
If any folklorists listen to this podcast, I'm sure it actually is quite complex.
Well, maybe I'll satiate.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that satiate?
Say,
Is that
yeah, it's fine.
maybe I'll satiate the folklorist out here because
I think it's just sate.
sate. I think they're
I'm
both
sated.
words. What's the one that's less sexual?
I think it's pleasure. I think it's you're going to pleasure
Okay,
them.
I'm gonna pleasure the folklorists listening to this episode, and begin this one by talking about the main guy who's responsible for the legends of the fairy folk.
Okay.
So that man is very interesting. His name was Robert Kirk. And Robert Kirk was a minister and Gaelic scholar who was born on December 9th, 1644 in Aberfoyle, Stirling, Scotland.
Interesting. Okay. I I don't know like I think of fairies and fae as such like a British Isles
Hmm.
thing and like so I would have thought maybe Ireland but probably
That
England.
that is very interesting. You're gonna find out why that's interesting in a little bit because it starts off in the Scottish Highlands.
Okay.
Sorry, okay, let me back that statement up. Fairies existed before this guy. The idea of fairies existed before this guy, but the popular canon is the result of this man's work.
Gotcha. So this is like the gnomes thing that I talked about
Yes.
where there's like the book written by the yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I think honestly the reason why I go there like for where they came from is because every time fairies are involved in like a piece of media I watched growing up, they had someone with a British accent narrating it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's just British accent is media like shorthand for old or smart. And
Mm.
so you
Yeah,
get that
right.
you just get it, you know? That's what you hear.
I don't know if it like ended
Which is a British psyop, by the way.
you know what? You're
They've-
probably right.
They've put themselves in this position where we think they're all smart, charming, and like super well read and like and all that. When in reality, they're no better than any of us.
Yeah, that's
frankly
exactly.
fuck the colonizers.
Yeah, I was just looking at our look, British listeners, you gotta kind of get on our level here and just understand that it's all in good fun, but also fuck you. You know,
Look, there's blood on all your hands, but frankly, there's blood on all Americans' hands too. So
that's
it's
true.
that's just
Everybody's
that's
just
part of living in modern
everybody's
society.
just splashing around in a big ass pool of blood. We're all just wearing our floaties and making blood squirts in the
We're all just wearing our floaties and making blood squirts. I just want to make it clear that that's what you just said to me on a recorded medium
you
for
know,
all
like
time.
you cup your hands together and you squirt your friend in the pool. And
I'm
it's all-
aware. I've been in a pool with you.
yeah. Yeah, you make the squirts, you wear your floaties, you do the backstroke, and it's all in a big pool of blood.
No, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm
The
saying.
less sexual thing to talk about to the folklorists is making squirts.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me. I'm gonna de-sex all of this real quick. So let's get back to talking about this minister. Um, so Kirk was minister at the Aberfoyle parish and a number of other parishes throughout his days, but he was also a well-studied man. He graduated at 17 from the Edinburgh University with a 17th century master's degree, whatever that looks like.
Okay.
Um, and he was also apparently a pretty gifted linguist because he ended up translating a ton of Bible psalms into Gaelic.
Oh, so he's a cunning linguist. Okay.
He's a cunning linguist. He edited the Irish edition of the Bible. I don't know.
Why is that funny? There's nothing funny about that statement.
It is really funny to like say that this is this country's Bible. You know,
Yeah.
this country's edition of the Bible. This is the Indiana edition of the Bible. There's a passage about like Hoosiers and fucking what do we even have here? Corn.
Yeah, we
He
have,
turned corn into wine or whatever.
Jesus' miracle turning corn into wine.
We have
He just made like undistilled vodka.
Yeah, this is like the fucking this is the version of Jesus that like hung out in Fort Wayne and they had an overabundance of corn but no wine and they were like, Jesus, you got to make something happen here.
He made sour mash.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
So fucking Kirk's actual life isn't very germane to our topic. He has a whole history.
I thought he was Scottish.
Yes. He has a whole history that you could get into like about his work with the church, but who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
But what is German to the topic is the book he was writing while working at the Aberfoyle parish towards the end of his life. While it wasn't officially published while he was alive, Kirk had been working on a manuscript that would later be published as a book in 1815 by Scottish historicist Walter Scott. And on its official release, that book was titled The Secret Commonwealth, or an essay on the nature and actions of the subterranean and for the most part invisible people heretofore going under the names of fauns and fairies or the like among the Low Country Scots, as described by those who have second sight, 1691.
I have seen that title somewhere. I don't know why.
That wouldn't surprise me.
But also, that is one of the worst goddamn titles I've ever heard.
It's bad. We're gonna scrap it. We just call it The Secret Commonwealth.
Okay, I was gonna say because like that really feels like something you put like the first bit on the cover, and then you open it up, and there's a colon and like a big like block of text.
No, he left in his will specifically. You need to fit all of that on the cover.
What is this? A Lawrence Armstrong title?
That is such a joke for.
Sorry, let me update this for the wider populace. What is this?
What
a Fallout Boy song title?
We said Fallout Boy at the same time. Thank you. Thank you.
Man,
yes,
now they're recording in the same room. I can't like edit myself to make the joke first and then school you. But
it's all good. No, see, there's gonna. I love the idea though that there's like a first edition joke and then a reprint where people will like understand it better. I really enjoy that. So the book is about what it sounds like from the title that I just read, which is it's an account of supernatural creatures in Scotland, but it is like more specifically like fae type creatures. However, how the text came into being is kind of interesting because as I understand it, belief in things like fairies and even this extrasensory perception thing that he talks about wasn't a totally uncommon belief in the region of Scottish Highlands that Kirk was hanging around in.
Okay.
Kirk saw the belief in the existence of fairies and supernatural powers like the second sight as a sort of vindication of religious belief and that these things prove the existence of God or something. Like,
okay.
He kind of, well, I'll mention it again later, but it's kind of like the existence of these like creatures and these powers are like miracles or gifts from God for humanity.
Okay. That
kind of. It's
that,
weird.
That feels like a roundabout way where like this guy just had an interest in fairies and stuff and he happened to be a minister, so he tried to like make the two work together.
Well,
When I like, I mean, maybe I'm colored by modern, interpretations of everything. How they're like the fairies and everything are like very naturalistic. They're
mhm,
very like,
yeah.
of the earth, of like the kind of not. I don't know if see, this is where I show my ass, 'cause I was about to say of like pagan stuff, and I don't know if there's actually a link
I
between.
don't
I don't think there's actually a link between
there's pro
paganism and fairies, but
I don't know whether there's like an explicit link between paganism and fairies, but there's like there's aspects to paganism. A lot of the like nature stuff that you referred to, it could maybe sort of congealed that way, like
yeah.
came together like that. But I don't know if that's where that connection actually came from. But
This
what I
is just one side of things that I really don't know enough about and should learn
oh,
more for
it's
sure.
I'm sure we'll run into more pagan related stuff. Because I know doing oh my god, what's the pagan name for Halloween? The
Not Saturnalia.
Samhain.
Samhain, yeah.
Doing that was, I mean, learning about that was fascinating, and how the Christians came in and fucked everybody over and everything was cool before that. And
Yeah.
it's just so learning about the druids and the pagans and all that stuff. That is, I'm sure we'll run into it again. I didn't read about the pagans for this, but what I can say is that I kind of tried to draw. This isn't actually in my notes, but I did briefly read a mention of it. One of these things, one of the things about this topic is that people are like pointing out these things that are like, hey, we associate that concept with modern alien and UFO encounters. And one of the things that they point out is how in the 1960s sort of Space Brothers era of UFO and like abductees,
Okay.
there's that constant thing with the aliens where they want to protect the natural order of Earth, and they want to protect like nature and stop us from destroying the world.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of those things where if you look back at the sort of nature aspect of fairies, it could just be that they're the same thing. And so they point to that idea as being one of the reasons you can relate fairies to aliens, and they could be the same idea.
Because both of these things don't want us to ruin the earth,
Right.
the planet that we live on. They must be the same.
Well, it's interesting because if you subscribe to the extraterrestrial theory,
Mm-hmm.
then you kind of are like, why do they have a vested interest in Earth? Why do they care whether or not we destroy it? Like they're just passing by,
Yeah.
couldn't they? There is a part of this theory that gets into an alternate explanation. So
Okay.
they prove he considers this proof of God. It's a weird thing, but that's what he says. In a diary entry, Kirk describes taking a trip to London at one point where he encountered lots of skepticism in the coffee houses that served as these sort of public forums at the time.
So
So he's walking into a Starbucks and like kicking the door, and it's like, y'all, I'm not gonna do an accent. Y'all heard of fairies? And all the English people are like, oh, spit spot, no, that sounds like a load of rubbish.
this really sounds like, who was the like right wing personality that was like, I overheard people that with like Biden stickers saying they were going to vote for Trump in the coffee house, and he like would like cite going down to a local like independent roaster,
Oh,
and all of like the supposedly very left wing people were in there talking about how secretly they actually were his ideals.
this sounds very
I
familiar.
don't remember who it was.
I know what you're talking about. It's kind of like the guy in the Flat Earth documentary who's like hanging out at like a restaurant and like walking up to two random girls and being like wearing his like Earth is flat shirt and being like, oh, you want to hear, the Earth isn't actually a globe, and like walking up and just harassing people.
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of the same idea, but this is a guy in the 1600s harassing people, sipping on their Americanos about fairies.
Yeah, see, but the thing you said is a thing that someone actually did. This one is just a story this guy made up for
Right,
Twitter.
right.
Like 99%
It's the
certainty.
it's the down with cis bus.
Yeah,
and
it's
for
literally the down with cis bus is
for-
what it's.
for a very very niche group of people. I hope you all enjoyed that reference. So yeah, he like went to London at one point, and he's like in a coffee house talking about how I guess it's a public forum, so he's like talking to people there, and people there are like talking, and I don't know why he's there talking about fairies, but that's what he was doing. And he saw this like rebuke of these supernatural anomalies that he was like proselytizing about,
Okay.
as like an encroaching atheism in Europe and a blatant disregard for these unacknowledged gifts and miracles provided by God.
because this really feels like, and I mean this in the least condescending way. This feels like this guy walked in and was like, "Here's my Little Pony persona." And they're like, "That's not, what are you talking about? That's not like a thing." And he's like, "You must be atheist.
I mean,
Fuck you."
you can just like picture these people hanging out, sipping on coffee, and being like, "And I really like the part where God made the earth and He rested on this day." And then this guy walks in and he's just like, "Fairies were put into the ground because God loves us so much, and yes, you can predict the future."
Yeah, and they're just like, what fairies? What are you talking
What the
about?
fucking-
We're talking pure scripture here. We're biblical literalists.
We're talking about wheels of fire and parting seas and shit. You sound insane.
Ugh.
So he returns to Scotland in 1690 and thus begins his quest to talk with people of the countryside and gather accounts about anomalous entities, anomalous and unexplained events that he believed could be the work of fairies, and just stories about the second sight from folks who claim to be seers.
Okay.
And so seers being, in case you don't know, people who could predict the future and were at least according to fairy lore, the seers are better equipped to see the fairies for some reason.
Okay.
The second sight makes you more perceptible to these
Magics
things.
and
So
things?
yeah.
Okay.
So now he has this text, which was, in his own words, and this is a quote, "an attempt to suppress the impudent and growing atheism of this age." But unfortunately, he died in 1692 at the fairly young age of 47 before he could publish it. So gets published many years later, obviously. But
See, this, other than like him trying to fight back atheism and making this a very religious thing, this is the part of the story I can get down with. Like
him dying.
someone No, I'm talking about him traveling around like archiving folklore
yeah,
effectively
yeah.
and like taking down stories of weird sightings, and like this is close to like the Lauren Coleman of his time.
Right.
But then he
Yeah.
had to make it all about religion.
About God. Well, I mean, I feel like there's like up to a certain point in history, you do kind of got to make weird beliefs about God. Like God has to be involved in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Look, recently it was how God really doesn't want you to masturbate and he wants to make you
That's
eat a very
true.
bland diet. This time it's God gave
Yes.
us fairies for to show that he can do cool miracles, I guess.
Yes, God gave us incredibly sexy fairies, but we implore you not to masturbate about it.
So yeah, did God? This really brings the question of like, did God create the great fairy from Legend of Zelda?
Well, we'll get into sexy fairies in a little bit.
Okay, fantastic. I'm gonna start just cataloging them in my head. making
Yeah.
sure that I have.
Save that material for later.
Yeah.
So, despite his early death, his legend of the fairies begins basically with his death because a story began to get told surrounding his death. As the locals who were sympathetic to Kirk's beliefs tell it, and apparently it was a lot of them, it's said that he was walking through the parish one day when he passed by a fairy mound outside his manse, which is a clergy house, and suddenly he dropped dead by the fairy mound. Which
Okay.
the fairy mound is like those little tiny hills. I think it's also I think a term for like a burial site now. But like you can also think of fairy circles too, with the mushrooms growing in
yeah.
a circle. So he just dies right by a fairy mound, outside his manse. But the story doesn't end there.
Okay.
In both Walter Scott's historical writings and Walter Evans Wentz's text on the matter, which is he was a 20th century anthropologist, and he wrote a book called The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries in 1911, which is where a lot of this information comes from.
Okay.
They discovered locals in Aberfoyle.
Sorry, I just thought there's a guy walking his dog in an Austin 316 shirt outside of our apartment right now.
Nice,
Yeah.
Maybe we could get him up here to talk about fairies.
Shouts out wrestling. Woo!
Shouts out to the idea of wrestling. So they discovered that locals in Aberfoyle all told them the same story when they went to ask them about this event, they said that Kirk did not die. He was captured either in body or in spirit by the fairy people.
Okay. Well, one of those is pretty easy to prove or disprove,
Right.
really. The captured in spirit, I can't help you with, but they had to have found his body for him to be dead, right?
Well, I don't know a ton of the events surrounding his. I can tell you that what's said to be in his coffin is a bunch of rocks.
Oh, really?
That's
Okay.
one of the things that locals will say, or did say at one time. That's like one of the legends. Yeah, they believed that the fairies were angry with Kirk for divulging the secrets of their people and their world, stealing him away to live with them forever. And yeah, it's buried at Aberfoyle, but the rumor is that it's full of rocks. Although I doubt you'll find too many people in 2021 saying actually they put rocks in there because he was stolen by fairies.
Yeah, I do like the fact that the fairies are punishing him for like divulging their secrets by taking him away to their like confirmation of the thing he was most interested in and then letting
Yeah.
him live forever.
Yeah.
It really feels like at best that'll turn into a Twilight Zone episode once he gets really bored in like 100 years. But for right now, it feels more like a reward than punishment.
If this dude turns back up on the earthly realm and transports himself from 1692 to 2021 after living with the fairies for hundreds of years,
And then we show him an iPhone.
we produce a sitcom about him. We show him TikTok,
Oh man, he
and he
shits himself.
dies instantly.
Yeah.
Walter Scott, the historian, had also obtained a story from a local minister who claimed that one night an apparition of Kirk appeared to one of his relatives and commanded him to send a message to Graham of Ducray, one of Kirk's cousins. And the message was that Kirk would appear in spirit as an apparition at the baptism of Graham's son. And when he does so, Graham must take a knife and throw it over his apparition's head as a means to scare away the fairy folk who kidnapped him.
Okay. Now is this one of those places where it has to be like an iron knife? Isn't there somewhere like iron and fairies?
Oh, yeah, I remember reading that. It didn't, in the version of the story that I read, it didn't specify. But one of that actually reminds me, interestingly, because one of the pieces of fairy lore is that they do hate iron because when fairies die, they all go to hell. This
Really?
this
Okay.
actually ties in kind of to, there's like so many tidbits of lore.
So wait. God created these wonderful magical beings to show us the wonders of his power, and then sentences them all straight to hell, regardless of their deeds on Earth.
The fairies are kind of a cursed people, it sounds to me.
This really sounds like if he's trying to make this religious, which that's on him. That's on
Yeah,
Mr. Kirk
yeah.
here, Reverend Kirk. But he is at the same time proving, if God created the fairies, that God is wonderful in the fact that he can create all these things, but also wildly unjust and like
Cruel.
yeah, like cruel.
This is like if Job was a race. Like
This is we're just gonna make a D&D race that's just Job.
It's awful. Like, I mean, the fairies are kind of like, they can be kind of mean too.
Oh my god. Imagine a D&D race that's Job, and they don't roll their own dice. You have two other players roll dice for all of their rolls, and you have to take the lower one.
Yeah, you're always taking it. Oh my god. Can you role play through the Bible? You could just do like set a campaign and your campaign setting is fucking Jerusalem or whatever. Or maybe that doesn't.
Yeah, the whole
work.
Bible takes
the
place
whole
in
Bible.
Jerusalem.
That's one of the places. Okay,
It is.
There's a you have to adventure to Sodom and Gomorrah and visit the crazy. They got crazy shops there. I don't know. I don't fucking know Bible stuff.
Yeah, it's
I'm
fine.
speaking
No, it's
beyond what I understand, but that could be kind of fun. Make a D&D campaign. Check this out, all you Christians.
You're either like a son of Abraham, that would be like one race, and then or like designation, or like
class.
there'd be like angels and shit,
Okay, yeah.
and then there'd also just be the Job class, which you only take as a joke. You have all drop.
Yeah,
Well, no, you
it's
have really high stats, but your rolls are entirely out of your own control.
right, right. There you go. Some. This sounds like a great group activity for your next Bible
Do you have a
camp.
friend that you just want to piss off to no end? Make them roleplay Job in your
Yeah,
next
there you
D&D
go.
game.
So yeah, they gotta throw a knife over. Oh, but
Oh, yeah, that's what
but
we're
what I was
talking
gonna
about.
say is the iron thing is that the reason they hate iron is because apparently they come from hell and they'll return to hell, and uh so they're kind of thought of as maybe demons in some pieces of lore, but they hate iron because apparently in hell iron flows like water because it's so hot and the smell of iron gets to them, so like they hate it.
So it's a smell thing?
I guess so. It's yeah, they just like they're afraid of
Wow.
iron because like the iron in hell is all like flowing magma.
Okay. See, like that if you had been like, why do fairies hate iron? Go. I would not have been able to come with that answer in a million years.
Somebody once dropped a big iron acme
Uh,
block on a fairy and all the fairies in the world saw it. Or
I thought it was going to be something of like the properties of iron, like it's made out of things that are poisonous to fairies or something. So if
Mhm.
they, like
Nope.
they're allergic effectively.
It's
But no, it's they hate the smell because they're from and will return to
to
hell.
hell. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
That's just one piece of there is so much lore I couldn't include all of it, but that's one that I remember reading and being like, huh.
I feel like we could have multiple fairy episodes in the future.
Possibly, very possibly. So they're trying. He's like, he's appearing as a ghost, and he's like, dude, get my cousin to throw a knife over my head at his son's baptism. It sounds
Like-
weird when you say it out loud.
Yeah. Oh, here's the thing. This whole story is weird if you say it out loud.
And I guess the knife would scare away the fairies. And the story goes that his apparition appeared at the baptism, but everybody was too shocked to think of throwing the knife, so
Look,
they just didn't do it.
You had a fucking warning here,
You had
folks.
one job.
This guy is now sentenced to hang out with fairies in a spectral kind of ethereal entity for all
it's
time.
like, yeah, it's another realm that. Well, okay.
Well, okay. The people that are the parents of Graham, is that the kid's name?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. Those people need to start fucking make a new one, and then they'll get a second shot when that baby gets baptized.
There you go. Yeah, get another baby going, get another baptism going. Maybe we can save Kirk's spirit yet.
Yeah. And this time, don't fuck up. Everyone have knives.
Yeah. Yes, everybody's strapped at this baptism.
It turns into like a fucking Rocky Horror Picture Show screening as soon as the thing, and it's like everyone just throws their knives.
Exactly. God, I'd love to see that. Baptisms would be so much more exciting with that going on. So Kirk's spirit may be long snatched away by the so-called invisible people, but the legends of the fairies, of course, live on, thanks to his research and writing on the folklore of the Scottish Highlands. Our understanding of fairy lore mostly comes from this guy's work. So now let me explain a little bit more of that fairy lore that people have come to take as a means of explaining. We can draw some parallels to UFO encounters.
Oh yeah, that's what this episode's about.
Yeah. And I'm going to drop a little hint that for those who are like in the know are going to be like, "Oh shit, we're going to do this." It possibly one of the other terms to explain what a fairy is the ultra terrestrial.
Oh, okay.
So to start, here's Kirk's original description of the fairy folk. Quote, "These Siths or fairies they call Slay Maith, or the good people, are said to be of middle nature between man and angel, as were demons thought to be of old, of intelligent fluidous spirits and light changeable bodies like those called astral, somewhat of the nature of a condensed cloud and best seen in twilight. These bodies be so pliable through the subtlety of spirits that agitate them that they can make them appear or disappear at pleasure." So they're kind of like aethery, wispy, and like half in reality.
This feels closer to what in my head is pinned as a djinn, almost.
Well, but then you could track that back to all
Yeah.
this as well. Yeah.
As like a kind of somewhat demonic kind of influence thing. Like I didn't expect this to be about fairies, little naked things with
Right.
with wings and like.
Though those do come up.
Okay.
Those do come up, and we'll get to it, but like there are some descriptions of fairies that talk about how they're like childlike. They're the size of children, they're humanoids, but they've got like big eyes and like sort of pointed ears and pointed features. And people point out that there's a lot of aliens that get that
Kind
description
of
too.
sound a bit like a small gray.
Yeah, there's a lot that sound kind of like small grays. So
Okay.
I have some more stuff that Kirk thought. Here's a passage from the website thinkanomalous.com. And I'm gonna see if you can kind of start pulling together things that sound like it could relate to UFO and alien phenomenon. Quote, while Kirk is generally sparse on details, he mentions a few stories of contact between human beings and fairies, many of which were threatening, and a few of which were fatal. Many of these stories involved nursing mothers being kidnapped to feed subterranean children. One informant told of a woman who was abducted for 2 years. I actually have this exact in Kirk's words. I have this story. While a lingering image of her remained in her home, then slowly decayed. Eventually, the likeness died, and the family buried it. Just before the real mother returned and told of her capture by the fairies. The woman said that she was held in a large space full of light with no apparent source. She said that she could rarely see her captors until she anointed her eye with an oil left nearby. Once she saw them, the people made her blind in that eye with a puff of their breath. Kirk was also informed that some children were abducted and never returned. Evans Wentz also reported a number of folk stories in which fairies abducted people and animals or caused their deaths. Other writers after Kirk's time also claimed that the fairy people were known to occasionally sacrifice humans in what was assumed to be some form of arrangement with the devil.
Okay. So, room full of light with an indistinguishable source is a thing.
Yeah.
Abducting children, abducting mothers, both of those things come up in a lot of the like Zeta-reticuli hybridization kind of shit.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yep. And the like the fact that this woman would be like, "Oh, here I can't see anything. Oh, here's a vial of oil. Let me drip it into my eyes." Is absurd.
I don't know why that is, because that is what he says in the story. I don't quite understand that, but it is like she's in this room and she can't really see what's going on until she puts this oil in her eyes. Really don't know what's going on there. That wasn't one of the things I was trying to point at.
No,
but
it just stuck out to me.
I did want to point out that this also essentially brings up the idea of a replacement or a doppelganger or a body swapped pod person.
Okay,
So
I was thinking, because like I haven't really found a lot of UFO stories with like replacement people. I'm sure they exist. I would actually be curious to try to seek some out. So if anyone knows of any like famous abductions with some sort of swap out, send them my way.
You're gonna shit when I tell you what the swapped out people, what that's all about.
I've been blocked up all day. It's really glad. I'm really glad this is gonna happen.
It goes on, it says, quote, the invisible people were individually much stronger than even multiple men and could not be killed by human weapons. This next part relates back to a story that I love that I'm sure you will immediately think of the same thing I thought of. Let me just leave it at that. In combat, they were known to use stone weapons and throw little barbed darts, and they could strike their targets dumb. Still, they never attacked anyone.
Wait, strike the targets what?
Dumb.
Oh, I thought they said strike their targets dong.
Strike the targets dong. Strike the targets dumper. Still, they never attacked anyone except when provoked. One seer told Kirk that he cut a fairy clean in two, but nothing remained of the body once he'd halved it. So
did he do this with a katana?
With a katana, it doesn't get specific, but I'm gonna assume that yes, it was with a katana.
from the traveling Ronin that were around Scotland at the time. Oh man,
check out Stardust Ranch.
Fantastic stuff.
So
I'm not a huge Ghost Adventures fan, but that episode and the Island of Dolls are like
they're really great.
And also the Return to Winchester House. Those three are worth your time if you haven't seen them. Seeing Zach Bagans go in an all over print shirt of guns and just start like waving a fucking Winchester rifle around in Mary Winchester's.
Yes.
I think that's her name. No, Mary Winchester's the.
Is that Supernatural?
That's Sam and Dean's mom.
Oh my god. Good lord.
Oh fuck. But in her like seance room is fantastic. And then This one, you hear the guy talking about how he cleaved a fucking alien in
Yeah.
half with a samurai sword.
He cuts an it might
Ugh.
not have been Stardust Ranch, but I also think of
Is it?
the
Yeah,
guy who like claimed that aliens were invading his property. Maybe it was Stardust Ranch, and he like in the documentary with I think Zach Baggins is uh him going like the aliens landed and I started firing, and it cuts to him like unloading with like a semi-automatic into the
I
night
I
sky.
vaguely remember this,
So
but I don't
fucking
remember which one
funny.
it
The
is.
unintentional comedy of those shows
Ugh.
is delicious.
This is now making me want to see last Rambo esque or Rambo Last Blood esque alien like
Yeah.
movie
Oh yeah.
where it's just hit like someone sees aliens and are bugged with them for a while and then just sets up a fucking death trap for
Yeah,
aliens
you could
and
easily do that
ugh,
kind of a story and set it in like Kelly
it would be
Hopkinsville.
way less racist than Rambo
Yeah.
Last Blood.
Yeah.
That movie
Um
sucked. Anyway,
one last tidbit. Another time he wrestled one of the invisible people and his neighbors claimed to have seen him disappear and reappear an hour later somewhere else.
missing time,
So,
kind of.
one of the first things I ran across was the common thread between fairies and UFOs of missing time, like you said. And in most stories about encounters with fairies, people are said to disappear for hours or days at a time, but at worst, they can disappear for years. When they reappear, they tend not to remember what happened during their disappearance, though some of them do. And when they do, there are multiple descriptions of a sort of circular indoor place with no discernible light source. Um,
Okay.
like how you might think of a UFO.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes these people also return with extraordinary new powers. I found two stories, one of which even predates Kirk's writings, that have been pulled into the fairy canon and perhaps the UFO canon as well, if you choose to believe. So the first is the 13th century tale of Thomas the Rhymer, a bard from Scotland, kind of on the nose.
Eminem's greatest rival.
Yeah. Yeah. A bard from Scotland who finds himself suddenly confronted by the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. He's just out and about in, I think, a forest, and this woman approaches him, and she's sitting on a big white horse, and she's wearing an emerald green cloak. And the woman tells Thomas that she's the queen of the fairies. And he's sort of hypnotized by her gaze, the way it's described. And Thomas requests a kiss from her. And she says, okay, but only if you come with me and serve me in my kingdom. Now,
I think I have heard this story.
okay.
I think it gets used in either an X-Men book
Really?
or in Fables, which I read like a long time
Well,
ago.
that's interesting because by serve him, she meant come and you will give me sex when I want sex.
Oh, that I don't think I.
She wants him to come and stay in her kingdom to have sex with her
Okay. Well,
Um,
that's. I mean,
as she requires it.
fine. Okay.
So here's the interesting thing here. That here's some context for what's happening here. A common thing in fairy lore is that they struggle to reproduce, possibly as a result of a curse, I think from the divine, because like I said, they're from hell and will return to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And humans, however, can help maintain the quote unquote fairy stock. And so kidnapped humans sometimes provide sex for reproduction. They are experimented on, quote unquote, and used for sex or extracted. And one of the things that I also read is that fairies can reproduce, but it has really shitty outcomes and a lot of deformed fairy babies.
This really feels like remember the episode I did about aliens being humans from the future, and
Mm-hmm.
they've had a genetic degradation
Yeah,
enough to the point where they have to come back and do so. The whole hybridization thing is basically
is to try
future
and save
humans
humanity.
cross with
Yeah,
current humans to try to save and like subvert a cataclysmic future.
yeah.
Has that energy here?
That's interesting. I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right. But the thing is, the stories will talk about not only that, but sometimes they'll just skip the sex act of it, and they will kidnap pregnant mothers, take their children, and then return the mother without her baby.
That is what I was thinking of.
Mhm.
I think that's like stealing the children is what I'm used to.
Yeah. So that's another thing that's like you can find in a lot of the sort of human alien hybridization stuff is that they take babies or they take pregnant women and experiment on them. And I mean, these are accounts from like the 12 this is the 12th century we're talking about right here, this like kidnapped to the land of the fairies, although this could just have been some weirdo perverts like fantasy, but whatever. Other stories tell of fairies kidnapping newborn babies as well, and then replacing those babies with changelings,
Yep.
or sometimes, like I said, kidnapping mothers who are still nursing to have them serve as wet nurses for the fairies.
Okay.
So they're all about the baby stuff and
Yeah,
the making of the post baby situation with the nursing.
Yeah, they're all
They're
about
into all of
about
it.
the babies.
All about it.
Okay.
So back to Thomas, he spends 3 days in the fairy kingdom, presumably having just wild face sex, and is then returned to our world only to find that 7 whole years have passed on Earth. He's also been granted the power of the second sight by the Queen. And it's said that Thomas returned to the fairy realm, possibly because he was smitten by the fairy queen and now unable to relate to just human reality any longer.
Okay. Well, every 7 years, isn't it every 7 years that like your whole body like creates entirely new molecules? So he left and came back to an entirely different humanity than
Yeah.
he left.
Yeah.
So
He also has
I,
fairy powers now.
yeah, he also has the second sight. He's, had some really wild sex. Although only 3 days. Like a lot can happen in 3 days, but like I was expecting him to be gone for much longer.
I mean, it honestly could have just been like, God, Earth is cool, but I gotta get back to that
Yeah, I gotta get back to the
gorilla
fairy
grip fairy.
fuck passion.
So
Fuck
um,
fairy fuck passion is where my
fairy
brain
fuck
went.
passion.
That's
That
hey Kyle, fairy fuck passion, fairy godmother, Esmeralda from what I don't know. I can't think of any fucking Disney character
Prince
fairy
of
names.
Egypt. Isn't
That's
there an Esme? Oh wait, no, there isn't.
no,
I'm out of my
no.
fucking mind. I've completely lost it. This is the one.
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm talking about. Esmeralda. What's Esmeralda from?
I think she's like
The
an
Little Mermaid or
evil
something?
stepmother in something. I don't remember. Someone's probably
So
like
fairy godmother, evil stepmom from Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
And
And
third, Mushu from Mulan. So
fairy fuck passion.
so I'm gonna say fairy for fairy godmother. It's in the name. Couldn't be more obvious. I'm gonna say fuck the evil stepmom because I like him mean. And then passion for Mushu because look at him. He's what's not to just be wildly love that little dragon guy with the voice of Eddie Murphy. It's not actually Eddie Murphy. It's just they have the same voice, and I'm very passionate about that idea. So another similar story comes from the 19th century when two Welshmen, Llewellyn and Rhys, were walking home late one night when Rhys said he could hear enchanting music nearby. Llewellyn said he couldn't hear it, and so Rhys said, let me go get my dance on real quick, and I'll meet you back home.
Don't go dance with a fairy.
Exactly. Llewellyn, assuming that the music thing was an excuse for Rhys to go grab some drinks at the local alehouse, went home without him. And the next day, Rhys was nowhere to be found. It wasn't until a year later, after Llewellyn had been accused of murder by the locals because Rhys never reappeared, it was then that Llewellyn decided to return to the spot where Rhys had disappeared with the help of some friends to search for the man. And there, Llewellyn found a fairy circle that when he put a foot into it, he would like step into it.
Yeah.
He could see these little, he could hear the enchanting harp music, and he also saw these tiny child-sized humanoid creatures dancing around inside the circle. Among them was Rhys.
Turned into a fairy.
No, it was just him.
Oh, okay.
It was just him, and he was just trapped in there with these little fairy creatures. And he had to basically like forcibly pull Rhys out of the circle and take him back to the village.
Oh, he didn't have to throw a knife over
no
Rhys's head or some shit?
No, he pulls him out of the circle, which kind of I think snaps him out of a sort of a trance.
Okay.
And it's said that so basically they go back to the village. He clears his name with people. I didn't murder this guy. He just has been trapped in the fairy realm for a
Yeah.
year. Um, but it's said that Reese was just like, despite being snapped out of the trance, he just like wanted to return to that circle so badly.
This dude got gone girled by
He
fairies.
got, yeah, and he wanted so badly to go back and dance with him, but knew that he couldn't because I guess like once he stepped out, he couldn't get back in or something.
Okay.
That he just got depressed and then quickly became sick and then died.
Oh shit. Okay.
So
Okay. That's depressing.
yeah, that is depressing.
Just
He had
should
so
have
much
just left
fun.
him. It's like, look, no one ever wants to leave Burning Man.
Exactly.
Just let him stay.
And a fairy circle like that is basically the Fey equivalent of Burning Man. So, beyond just missing time in the aforementioned interspecies breeding, there is another concept brought forth by Kirk that some say could explain the phenomenon, and this is my favorite part, of the men in black.
Hell yes.
When a human is kidnapped by a fairy, like I said before, a doppelganger of some sort is often left behind. Kirk referred to these replacements as co-walkers, co-walkers,
Okay.
and stories tell of the co-walkers being human but not perfectly human.
Okay. Gotcha.
Often-
Like where this is going.
Often they would have these little tells that show they're not fully human, such as speaking slightly off, being oddly clumsy, just generally out of sync with the human world.
Having no body hair.
Yes, there's all kinds of like weird tells that they have. Now we're running a little short on time, so I'm there, but there like I have the story in where basically a woman is kidnapped and her replacement stays with the family, and then she dies after 2 years, and then the real wife returns after her fake doppelganger is buried, and this is the woman who had to like anoint her eyes with oil and stuff to see
Yeah.
her captors. So it's a kind of longer story, so I'm going to just jump over it. But the suggestion is that the men in black who are known for appearing and acting not quite human are actually the replaced humans or co-walkers of fairy lore. And again, this is all meant to imply that fairies and aliens are one and the same here. So,
Yeah. I not to spend too much time on this, but like
no, good.
Men in Black don't I would be curious what accounts or if anyone has any ideas about what changes the tactics of these people
Well,
going from replacing people to threatening people to shut the fuck up.
well, here's the thing. They kind of talk about the co-walkers as being like puppets who do the bidding of the fairies.
Okay.
And if we're kind of following with like assuming that the Fae don't want their secrets out in the world, then it would make sense that their doppelganger like puppets that they control are out there like now. Like I don't know what they did. It's like almost like they kind of kept people quiet
Mhm.
and like unassuming. But nowadays they have to go to these extra lengths to make people shut the fuck up because we're out there talking about it. And
I wonder if you could put this into context of like the whole supposed treaty with the U.S. government and
Mhm.
how like the rise of the Men in Black is basically now because they have like this agreement that they don't have to do, like they don't have to be as, they still have to be secretive, but it's more of like we gotta shut the shit down secretive as
yeah.
opposed to like this more we're gonna try to trick people.
Hey, I mean that does sound like the kind of theory you could run into with this, or some diligent conspiracy theorist could crack that one for us as well. Now, all this theory about fairies and aliens is a relatively new one. One of the first major works theorizing on this idea was written by none other than a person. Okay, so there's two major people involved here.
Okay.
Two names that are heavily referenced in this show. One I think we've talked about quite a bit more. Another one who gets brought up on the It Gets Weird Discord quite a bit. That is Jacques Vallée,
Yep.
who is very it's Jacques Vallée and John Keel
Yeah.
are
okay.
two guys here. So basically we haven't gotten into deep detail on either of these guys, although I think Keel we had to talk about a decent amount for the Mothman stuff because
Yeah.
he wrote the Mothman prophecies.
That was early enough that I don't know if we fully did it justice, but
yeah. But
we probably made a lot of dick jokes.
we definitely did. I remember the phrase Mothman's little moth rocks.
You're right.
What I want to say about both of these things is
Mhm.
I'm not going to get in depth with them on this episode, but this is where I was like, Niall, I gotta call dibs. I will soon be talking about Jacques Vallée because I am fascinated after reading a little bit about him here.
Okay.
Um, so he had a book called Passport to Magonia, where he sort of explains this unified theory of aliens and fairies. And he specifically cites Kirk's famous writings in The Secret Commonwealth. So he says here, quote, the modern global belief in flying saucers and their occupants is identical to an earlier belief in the fairy faith. The entities described as the pilots in the craft are indistinguishable from the elves, sylphs, and lutins of the Middle Ages. Through the observations of unidentified flying objects, we are concerned with an agency our ancestors knew well and regarded with terror. We are prying into the affairs of the secret commonwealth. What a great little, fun little piece of writing. I love
Yeah,
that.
I'm so we'll get into this in the future, I'm sure, but I'm trying to figure out. So in this case, they're not actually from space; they're from inside the Earth, or they're
No,
actually from space.
that's what I'm
and
about to get
fairies are
into.
okay.
That's what
Okay,
I'm about to get
you
into.
have the answer.
I'm going to briefly talk about this because if we were to get into it, we'd have a whole episode to talk about it. But Valet points out some of the striking resemblances between fairies and contemporary UFOs that I still haven't mentioned. Like he talks about their swimming through the air, which that also reminded me of oh god, the beasts,
The shit.
why can't I think something beasts, the beasts that fly through the air and
Yeah,
are like
Fantastic Beasts
and where to scope them out.
I don't
You know
remember
what I'm
what they're
talking
called. Yeah,
about.
I do.
They're kind of like cryptids that float around in the atmosphere.
They're just called atmospheric beasts,
Atmospheric
right?
beasts. Thank you.
Yeah.
It reminded me of atmospheric beasts, but he talks about how there will be references to them piloting ethereal vehicles. The fairies will, and those captured by fairies, like I said before, would be in these rooms that they would describe as circular shaped, no clear sign of where the light source is coming from. Uh, Kirk assumed that these places were actually underground, keeping in line with his sort of stories that he was told about the subterranean fairy kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
But UFO fairy synthesizers, believers, point out that it could just as easily have been a craft that left Earth
Yeah. Okay.
or something of that nature. Now, that's not exactly what Valet is talking about. It's with these alternate theories for UFOs and Valet's writings on the subject that I discovered a concept in ufology known as cultural tracking. I don't know if you've ever heard this.
I don't know. I don't think so.
This is basically the idea that the content of UFO reports throughout history shifts in tandem with changes in human culture. Now, this could be used to say that the phenomenon of UFOs is a human one, or you could go the Jacques Vallée, John Keel route and invoke the control system of the ultra terrestrials theory. We're going to
Okay.
be really brief on this. This is what I want to talk about in a future episode because it's so fucking dope. But basically, the theory is it's the one that Valet and Keel sort of seem to subscribe to, and it theorizes that UFOs and basically all Fortean phenomena such as hauntings, cryptids, etc., are all the result of this ultra terrestrial control system, and this would synthesize fairies and UFOs nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And the ultra terrestrials are beings that are possibly from another dimension or a parallel universe or a different plane of existence, could be in tandem with ours, like mirrored. And these beings are beyond human experience, pretty much.
Okay. I've come across these concepts not in that exact route. Like I'm very excited for that episode. I'll just say
Yeah.
that I love this kind of shit.
It's so cool, and I found so
Great.
much writing on it, and I really want to read some Jacques Vallée. And because the other part of it is this control system aspect of the theory, it suggests that if these ultra terrestrials are the beings responsible for the anomalous phenomena, and hey, if I get something wrong, we have a particular member of the Discord who's going to let me know. So thank you, please let me know in advance. Thank you in advance, because we do have somebody. It's kind of amazing. We have somebody in our Discord who has read a ton of Valet.
Oh, and what,
Um,
what Discord is that? Is that our
That is
exclusive
the
Patreon Discord?
exclusive Patreon Discord. If you want
Yeah.
all the secret scoops into Jacques Vallée and the control system UFOs, please donate $5 to us. So the control system aspect, in very brief, it suggests that if these ultra terrestrials are the beings responsible for this phenomena, they have implemented a control system that has power to sway third dimensional, or in other words, human reality. And this actually ties back in a bit to like William Bramley, who I mentioned in the the plague UFOs episode,
Yep.
people who share this school of thought, because the control system provides the ultra-terrestrials a sort of custodian role over the planet Earth. Like they shift our reality, is how I'm kind of understanding it. And I could have it a little off. So when I get into that Jacques Vallée episode, you better believe we're going to get deep into whatever the hell the control system theory is.
Fantastic.
So
Looking forward to it.
Our perceptions would shift culturally via this control system by the custodians. So I actually have like a whole bunch more stuff, but I think I'm gonna save it for my Jacques Vallée episode, because we'll also have to talk about John Keel, who once again deserves his own episode.
Yeah, we'll just keep chaining these concepts into different episodes.
This is I feel like this is just the way of things now. Is just like these chaining domino effect of stories.
Look,
like
you have to cut your episodes somewhere.
I know,
because otherwise it would be, the entire podcast would be 4 million hour episode.
Right.
That just links everything together.
This was all to say that the ultra terrestrial theory and Jacques Vallée kind of trying to unite all these different Fortean things. It's fairies could be explained as also being in this web of phenomena the same thing.
Okay.
But I wanted to focus on the fairy aspect of this because I've been wanting to talk about fairies. I've run into this topic a million times in my research, and I finally found a way to talk about fairies a little bit more.
Yeah, so, good shit.
So that is my Fairies Are UFOs episode. Niall, I'm sure there's a million more things I could uncover if I wanted to.
For sure. But for now, I think you might have a big question for me.
Cool. I do have a big question. Are you ready?
I think so.
Cool. Niall, what reoccurring nuisance in your life would cause you some relief if you knew that it was being caused by interdimensional fairy aliens?
So this is presupposing that me knowing the cause of some inconvenience or frustration in my life would make it better.
Yes. It would be like, oh, this isn't like my fault, or oh, this isn't as stupid as I thought it was. It's because the fairies are up to their shenanigans.
Okay. I honestly think this is purely from a I don't know. This is one of those things, like, it was in my head because it just happened. But like, if somehow I find out that fairies run Avid, who makes Pro Tools, and they're responsible for their tricks in the eye lock and making it so that it doesn't. It's one of the most frustrating pieces of technology I've ever come across, and frankly is as good of a reason for God not existing as this guy tried to prove that fairies were a good reason for him to exist.
I mean, what is a software engineer other than just a big group of fairies running around smacking keyboards? That works.
So I think like the eye lock not registering with my computer, because for some reason it decided that it didn't see it, even though it's there, and has never. It is always plugged into my computer at all times.
I've seen it,
and
I'm looking at it right now.
The light is on, but it didn't want to open Pro Tools for me. So I think honestly that would be, if I just knew that it was something mystical as opposed to just a side effect of capitalism and its restrictions on like the whole DRM stuff and copyright protection for software is one of the more frustrating sides of capitalism. Yeah. So if we'll go ahead and chalk that one up to fairies instead, so I can sleep better.
Fairies, they love to get up to mischief in all different kinds of ways. For me, it would have to be when I'm taking a big fat piss, and it just and how graphic do I want this joke
I'm
to be?
honestly very curious where you're going with this, because I could come up with at least one or two different ways to change this.
When I take a big fat piss and it just splashes all up on the rim of the bowl.
Yeah.
Even though I'm like aiming as hard as I can to a spot.
Aiming is not something that should ever be described as hard.
Right. It's not well. Well, I'm
Not because I'm saying like hard penis,
no,
but
I know.
like aiming is not something.
You
It's like talking about how fucking long a burger is. Like it's just not. It's not a good descriptor for like something that I would immediately like think of.
Can you picture being at like a cookout and somebody's just like, that is a big juicy burger, and some guy steps up and is like, yeah, that is a nice long burger. That's fucked up. Everybody would stare at you and say, dude, what you just said is so fucked up. It's like if you were trying to piss and you said aiming was hard. Uh,
No, that you were aiming hard.
that you were aiming hard.
Aiming can
Sorry,
be difficult.
that you were aiming hard. I apologize. No, but what I'm saying is I try real hard to be a very respectful tinkler.
Mhm.
If you sprinkle when you tinkle, please be neat and wipe
Yeah,
the seat.
we've lived together for quite some time of our adult lives, and you were never one to miss the bowl.
No, I certainly try not to, and when I do, I'm really bummed.
Yeah.
I'm
It does
like,
ruin
I
your
worked
day.
so
Sometimes I'll just like come home from a class when we were in college, and you would just be sitting with your head in head in your hands in the couch,
glass of scotch,
and I would just walk in and I would say, "You missed the bowl again," and you just say, "I can't
look
talk
up
about it.
teary-eyed.
I
I
can't
don't
talk
even
about
want to
this right now."
vocalize it. Yeah,
And I would just know that I have to be in the room in my own room all night.
yeah. I'm sorry about that, but you know how it is. I hate missing the bowl. I always am exerting the best effort to be as polite as I can in the bathroom because everybody else around me is not being so polite. People in fucking like my last job, I remember I would just like walk in, there'd be piss everywhere. Like, what are you people doing? I try so hard to not be the person contributing to that. And when it splashes up on there, I'm just assuming that there is an invisible fairy in the toilet that is just kind of taking a piss shower and like slapping the urine around and splash.
They're slapping that piss around.
Slapping the piss around. They're splashing around. They're having a fun little fairy time in the piss. That's kind of I'm just assuming there's got to be some toilet fairies. That I guess is the kind of point I'm getting to here. So apologies to everybody who hated that bit, but also deal with it. Yeah, that's my
Yeah, I think that's as good a way to end this one as any. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up and take care of some business.
yeah.
If you want to find more episodes of the It Gets Weird podcast, you can follow us on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can check us out at facebook.com/It Gets Weird Podcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird and we're probably there.
And then email us if you want to be on the show like Caitlin and let us hear your thoughts on our episodes. We love to hear them. It gets weird podcast at gmail.com. We do eat the emails. That is canon. That is in the It Gets Weird canon now, and we're sticking to it. Patreon.com/It Gets Weird. If you want to donate to us, and I know you do, we got a $2 tier and a $5 tier where you get bonus content. One just has a little extra bonus content on it. We have a $1 tier where it's like if you want to kick us a buck just to say thanks, you don't get anything out of it. It's just like, hey, I like your show. We also got that. Whether you donate at the $2 or $5 tier, you will get into our secret Discord chat where we talk. This is actually one of the people there. Shouts out to Joke Cube. They introduced me to Jacques Vallée. And that's where I found forever ago. And that's where I kind of stumbled into the fairy stuff as well. So.
Yeah, and they have. I'll just say this: if anyone ever has wants input on suggesting topics to cover, the Discord is the best place to do that. They have spawned multiple episodes of this podcast.
No offense to people on other places, we don't take topic suggestions from there quite as much. But if you're in the Discord, we have taken multiple suggestions from people in the Discord because. If you're donating to It Gets Weird, you've got a lot of good ideas. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
So,
it instantly makes you have better ideas.
Exactly. It's an elevated consciousness or that you obtain by donating.
As soon as that charge from Patreon.com hits your credit card or debit card, or maybe I believe you can't use certain types of cards, as we've been told by someone who does listen to this podcast. Well, so as soon as that charge goes through, you instantly start having better ideas in your day-to-day life, and just generally being just like a little bit cooler, just like a little
bit more enlightened. Now, all that being said, if you can't donate or don't want to donate, you know what? It's okay. We get it. Please, we don't advertise. We're not going to put any. You're not going to hear about fucking Food King or Mattress World or whatever those places are called. I'm not even going to dignify them with their real names. You're not going to hear about that here because we don't advertise. but we do love word of mouth. If you could tell people about us, that would be awesome. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your Congress folks what's going on. Tell them check out It Gets Weird podcast.
Yeah. All right. So that will wrap us up for this week. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for our patrons, one of which was instrumental in getting us onto this episode. And this has been It Gets Weird. I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle signing out.
Peace.